One possible issue when it comes to monotheist religions is that in time they program people to believe that there is one single entity that controls everything. See, divinity doesn't control anything. It's the teachings within each of the writings that may give that impression to people. But people may actually end up believing that sooner or later. Let's not forget each of the three monotheist religions, the main ones, the Abrahamic ones. Well, they each had let's say, a modest start, right? And even now, through most of their time, they have been taught to people who are very simple-minded. The masses have always been illiterate and simple-minded, and it's always been easy for them to invent all sorts of things because simple-minded people, they don't have any limit to their imagination, so they can easily end up believing this and that and whatever. And as this goes on through the generations, the problem is with a lot of people being miserable and specifically kept miserable in many cases, well, they identify with their misery. And when you identify with your misery, you simply compare yourself to everyone and everything else. And you start living life as if everything is separated one from the other. When you feel miserable, there is no connection to God, right? And complaining and victimizing are most likely going to happen. These are aspects which even further everyone, or well, the ones who suffer, they feel even more furthered away from creation. So when you think for way too long that divinity is one single entity out there, instead of feeling the idea that that divinity which is portrayed in those books is nothing else but creation. You don't have to look at creation as one separate entity because it's definitely not like that. If you want to feel creation, just look around you. Everything around you is creation. If you ask yourself one question, has God forsaken this universe or not? Well, you can argue with what you have been reading in magical books and religious ones and history and whatever and philosophy, but you're never going to know the true answer. The true answer is very simple, though. The very simple fact that this whole universe is still existing, that you are still here, conscious or not of whether you are here, well, that is proof that this universe has not been forsaken by creation. But the very simple point is this: creation is not a separate entity like it may be described in the Bible, the Quran, and other such writings. Because when you think that the whole point of your life is that God loves you and you must do everything possible so that they keep loving you, isn't that a narcissistic treatment? Aren't you treating it yourself as if God would be a narcissist? Because why would you care much about God? Sure, be a good practitioner of your own religion, but I don't think you should bother yourself too much with creation or with the Creator, because from their perspective, and even yours, they have everything. If they have so much power that they created this entire universe, why would you worry much about their love, right? If you care much about their love, it means you're afraid of their vengeance, right? Because each of those books has the so-called wrath of the so-called God. So it kind of portrays them a bit as a narcissistic being. Because in the end, people have usually been narcissistic, especially because of abandonment issues throughout the whole society, because everyone has been living in misery. Misery breeds the worst of the monsters. So, obviously, behind all these writings and the such, and all of these rituals and religions, there have always been monsters who have been making use of people's passion towards mysticism, right? And they have been contorting beliefs and the such so that they would get the attention that they always lacked. So don't bother yourself too much with creation being one single entity, because creation is everywhere you look. Even if you look inside of you, there's 4 billion cells, more or less, right? There's hundreds of millions, probably billions, millions of cells. You may not know how many of those there are. But there's definitely a huge galaxy within you, right? When you look at how the eye, for example, looks, well, how the eye looks is kind of very similar to how we can see a galaxy through our telescopes, right? You have a big microcosmos within you, right? Compared to other smaller things, it is a big microcosm. And, well, it is a very small one compared to a galaxy on its own, right? And, well, maybe that galaxy is not someone's eye, but ultimately, definitely, it is part of creation. So creation is everywhere around you. Don't mistake it for some mysterious scribblings in a book. Those people back in those times, they either imagined things or whether they were capable and knowledgeable enough. They had to write things in a way that, the simple minded people would understand. Because you can't present secrets of the cosmos to everyone. Don't forget, the more knowledge you have, there will be the more people who will oppose it. Because don't forget, religions have always been a set of writings to guide you towards a better perspective towards life. But the problem is, there have always been people who have been trying to make use of those for their own controlling purposes. So don't bother too much with that because you end up in a cerebral way. You end up making too much use of your mind when you're miserable. Most people in the world are miserable. And to them, it is way too easy to end up thinking that if God is one single entity, just like in science, everything is one single entity because science doesn't have the purpose to research everything as a whole. Science is just like the mind, a tool that breaks everything apart, right? It's just like a machine. You break it apart, you see each and every part, right? But it never teaches you how to treat everything as life, as creation, as a whole, right? Because look at, for example, medicine. It is treating people just like machines. It doesn't take into account whether there's a full moon, whether there's a new moon, whether there are certain energy influences and not, or whether there are, right? And surgeries are being done even if it's full moon or new moon, and well, they're going to cause more trouble than they actually are supposed to. And ultimately, if someone dies, barely anyone cares, but life goes on. So just like with science, you ask people about this, that, well, they will tell you all the properties, all the features, everything that they have studied, but they will miss the life in those things. In a tree, most likely they miss the life in their own family, in their own children, especially with people nowadays wanting to place so much more importance on their career. It's not that they're gonna reach anywhere, but they think in their mind that they're reaching somewhere because they have more money than they used to have. Well, they're not going to take any of that in their grave, but a lot of people realize they are one with creation just a few seconds before they pass away. This is what is called the unconscious death. But the problem is, too much separation makes people think that God is wanting out there, right? And they mistake it for their narcissistic parents or, parents who have not given them enough attention and the such. These things are real issues in the world, and it is high time humans start actually dealing with those. Because why not try to focus on your own things? Why not focus on you becoming absolute? And well, in the realm of physicality, maybe your absoluteness doesn't mean you will equal the power of creation. Well, through high powers of spirituality, through high levels of spirituality, you can become a bit more than creation itself. Because compared to creation and all its secrets that will become known to you, you also have awareness, which creation does not have. Now, it doesn't mean you'll become necessarily stronger or better than creation, because once you reach that level, you will long to become one with creation. So, the point is, you will simply wish to go through a conscious departure, right? And become one with creation so that the karmic shell simply dissipates and there is no more a you, right? This will feel frightening to those people who are miserable and lonely and who think that everything is separated because they think everything they have is everything that there can ever be, right? Creation is ultimate. They don't need your attention. They don't need you to think that they're gonna love you. They have allowed this universe to create all the possibilities and probabilities so that you exist. I think that is enough love. I don't think creation has given you birth so that you think and you live life as if you've been abandoned all along. Maybe you haven't been raised by the right people, but to tell you one point, you are part of creation and you'll always gonna be. In this life and any other life that you will have. So one has to understand they're never gonna be truly alone because there are certain forces that have allowed you to exist. There are certain forces who obviously will help you throughout your way. But don't start imagining things on that. Because the more you think that you're alone, the more your mind will start creating all sorts of things to keep itself busy from the pain that loneliness can be. This being said, hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated, take care, and this being said, Ferenc Bor signing out.